Let us explore this dawn's meditation class and group practice, that we too could meditate like Jedi. Do bear in mind that today is the second day of the general strike for both consumers as well as workers. Please Google black out the system. This morning's lesson is based on the 30th verse of the meditation classic Unwaning Victory Banner, composed oh so many centuries ago by the great Buddhist reformer Prahevajra. Together let us relaxingly recite. Inner and outer are one. The outside itself is the inside. So there is no hidden depth to discover. Worldly existence is just a label caused by duality's mistaken view, consequently separating one from the equality of meditation. Inner and outer are one. This is not to be taken literally, but figuratively. And it is a figurative application of the figurative idea of emptiness. And for that to make sense, we've got to review the basics. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sex, including humans, even those who teach meditation. The majority of us were conditioned to have a yang or a patriarchal worldview that rewards being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, and punishes being flexible, loving, rational, laid-back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. Therefore, it should come as little surprise that the majority of meditation teachers implore their students to practice active focus as well as active analysis as their default mode. The problem with this is that we only evolved to rely upon our medial and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex sparingly. What happens when we over-rely upon it, when we overwork it? We begin presenting with symptoms of depression, as well as triggering our amygdala, which functions as the seat of both anxiety and aggression. This is darkly ironic because most people want the opposite of that. That's why they turn to what they hope is meditation. The good news is that neither the amygdala nor the prefrontal cortex constitute the entirety of our central nervous system. Consider, if you will, our spinal cord. It can be described as our autonomic nervous system. And it was nicknamed by the ancients as our Buddha nature. Why is that? You're about to find out. Every time we inhale and our air is pulled into our lungs by the flexing of our diaphragm, we are wired to automatically access the sympathetic aspect of our autonomic nervous system, which is kind of like a bunch of books on a bookshelf. This bad boy has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way, to notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. which is the opposite of the rigidity and controllingness of mere focus. What have we evolved to notice? Well, because we notice vulnerably and randomly, we are wired to notice all manner of phenomena. From the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. This includes mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination. But what are we to do with those things? Every time we exhale and our air leaves through our nostrils, we are wired to automatically access the parasympathetic aspect of that same autonomic nervous system, which is in actuality our spinal cord, constituting the very ends, kind of like bookends on a shelf, keeping the books from tipping over. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to support our physical relaxation as well as mental release to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, and less defining. If you prefer figures of speech, then as we relax into our exhalation, that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void, like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although could look tantalizing to the eye, feels non-graspable to the hand. And so we see that whether we're talking about emptiness, or we're talking about not self, we're just talking about figures of speech to describe the natural experience facilitated by our autonomic nervous system during each exhalation. And now let's return to the lesson text, which of course is available for free download. Inner and outer are one. Well, how's that? Simple. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever inner or outer we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could each feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void, even just fleetingly. Therefore, for a moment, inner and outer, each smack of emptiness, each have the same taste. That's fleeting. That's not how things seem as we breathe in, but it's how things can seem as we breathe out. And that is useful for interrupting the momentum of our anxiety and aggression. This is something I failed to mention. I'd like to explore it right now. When we play, when we passively cooperate with our autonomic nervous system in a manner that the ancients referred to as mindfulness and meditation, And when we do that for at least 5 minutes, once every 12 hours or so, we are calming the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala. We are accessing the peace of our parasympathetic nervous system, as well as gently stimulating the anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy, which has the ability to use dread to generate compassion, as well as desire to generate love. Inner and outer are one. The outside itself is the inside. So this is a very poetic and playful way of exploring non-duality. Non-duality is predicated upon our visceral understanding of emptiness, not blindly believing in it, not pseudo-intellectually wrestling with it, but simply playing with it as a result of passively cooperating with our autonomic nervous system. This is important what comes next. This is very, very important. So there is no hidden depth to discover. One of the lies, one of the many lies of patriarchy is that the path is difficult. It requires metaphysical gymnastics for many reasons, and one of them is chasing deep trance or deep concentration. They laud deep concentration. But remember, concentration will mess us up. Concentration is antithetical to peace. It will exacerbate, it will trigger our amygdala, which is the seat of both anxiety and aggression. Additionally, remember that in the second to the last passage of the Buddha's discourse on the 4 bases of mindfulness, he insisted that one could master his path, which is enlightenment. One could master his path in as little as a week. He didn't say that was for special people at a special time in a special place who have received a special handshake. He said that anybody could master his path in as little as a week. Then remember, he also taught that the 4th enlightenment factor was joy, and that the 5th enlightenment factor was tranquility. There is no way to easily and joyfully accomplish this great, difficult, mind-bending thing, such as the perfection of concentration, for the very practice of it exacerbates anxiety and aggression. The Buddha nature is not something mysterious we have to hunt for. Our Buddha nature is simply a metaphor for the effects we experience when we passively cooperate with our autonomic nervous system. Now you might say, but we have the front of our brain for a reason. Yes, we do. The question is not should we ever use it. The question is how do we use the front of our brain sustainably, optimally? And the answer is this: go with the flow. The more we passively cooperate with our autonomic nervous system, the more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more our choices, utterances, and deeds could flow from the centered spontaneity that can help us to intuit how to best play with the front of our brain. Worldly existence is just a label caused by duality's mistaken view. One of the many lies of patriarchy that is found around the world and in many cultures and in many belief systems is the idea of renunciation. Renounce the bad, embrace the good. But that requires duality. So how do we practice non-duality without being destructive to ourselves and others? Once again, we go back to centered spontaneity. The more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more we gently stimulate our anterior cingulate gyrus, which is the seat of empathy. When we look at the Buddha's Eightfold Path, 50% refers to kindness. Kindness of intention, kindness of communication, kindness of conduct, and even kindness of commerce. The more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more we can't help but be drawn to empathy like a moth to a light bulb. The more we practice mindfulness, but how will we know what the kind thing is to do or say? Simple. The more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more our choices, utterances, and deeds will flow from love's centered spontaneity. Us relying on duality and renunciation and pushing and pulling is antithetical for meditation. If we eat Big Mac and fries 3 times a day, every day, and then fast on one day, we're not going to be able to undo the damage done by those 18 other meals. Similarly, if every time we get up from meditation, we forcefully ignore the impulses generated by meditation, the impulses of empathy and flow, then we will be undermining our own progress. Therefore, what we are called to do is this: be defined by mindfulness, meditation, love, and flow. And everything else will take care of itself. Having completed this morning's lesson, we can now shift gears. It is Obi-Wan Kenobi Wednesday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi after about 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is the Dzogchen Sende Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. So Dzogchen Sende Lama means my focus is not on ritual or visualizations or chanting or mantras or prayers or energy work. It's on mindfulness and meditation. That's my whole deal right there. For more than 30 years, I've harnessed my autistic special interest as well as my ADHD hyperfocus to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I can become your personal, nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. The easiest way to practice the mindfulness, which has been described by some as simply watching the play of mind, or the antics of mind, is to silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this each time we feel our diaphragm pull air into our lungs. The most efficient way to practice meditation, which is also known as relaxing the mind's non-graspable nature, is to silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease each time we feel air leave through our nostrils. The most efficient way for us to keep track of our first collection of 144 inhalations is for us to rest the first knuckle at the base of our right index finger upon the tip of our left index finger, palms up in our lap. We could use the 3 sets of creases found on all 4 of the fingers on our right hand to keep track of the next 12 inhalations. We could use the 3 sets of creases on the 4 fingers of our left hand to count 12 sets of 12 inhalations each. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I check for questions about once every 20 minutes or so. In reference to last night's short video that I posted, when we access our Buddha nature by passively cooperating with our autonomic nervous system, we turn our back on our Buddha nature by actively relying on our prefrontal cortex, or by actively relying upon our amygdala. So Buddha nature is just a way of saying that we all have an autonomic nervous system, and we can passively cooperate with it. That's the key to making our lives run like a well-oiled machine. Despite the slings and arrows of outrageous circumstances. Our job is not to force our diaphragm to articulate or force air out our nostrils, but to simply passively cooperate with the process, or in other words, get out of our own way. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's dusk meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.